Here's a political move that's about to ignite a firestorm across America. The Trump administration just declared war on one of the most fundamental environmental protections of the modern era. Last July, Lee Zeldin, who heads up the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency under Trump, dropped a bombshell announcement. His administration plans to completely eliminate what's known as the endangerment finding, a critical environmental rule that might sound boring but carries enormous consequences for every American's future. So what exactly is this endangerment finding, and why should you care? Think of it as the environmental equivalent of a doctor's diagnosis. Back in 2009, EPA scientists essentially issued a medical warning to the entire nation, officially declaring that 6 specific greenhouse gases, including the carbon dioxide we exhale and the methane from agriculture, pose a genuine danger to both current and future generations' health and well-being. This wasn't just some bureaucratic paperwork exercise. This finding became the legal foundation that allowed the EPA to take action against climate change for over 15 years. Every major environmental regulation since then, from limiting emissions at coal-fired power plants to setting stricter standards for vehicle exhaust, traces back to this single pivotal determination. But here's where it gets controversial. By wiping out the endangerment finding, the Trump administration is essentially handcuffing the EPA's ability to address climate change at all. It's like removing the legal justification for treating a diagnosed disease. Now, you might assume this move reflects what Americans actually want. After all, politicians typically follow public opinion, right? Well, prepare to be surprised. Brand new polling data from Data for Progress reveals something that might shock political observers. An overwhelming majority of American voters, we're talking about a landslide here, actually support the core principle behind the endangerment finding. The numbers are staggering. Only 15% of all voters believe that greenhouse gas emissions don't threaten public health. Even among Republicans, typically the most skeptical group on environmental issues, only 24% reject the idea that these emissions pose a health risk. And this is the part most people miss. The bipartisan agreement runs even deeper when it comes to taking action. A remarkable 86% of voters believe the government should regulate these emissions. This isn't just Democrats talking. 79% of Republicans and 87% of independents agree that regulation is necessary. Let's put this in perspective. Finding 86% of Americans agreeing on anything political these days is like discovering a unicorn. Yet on this issue, which many consider highly partisan, voters across the political spectrum share common ground. The polling methodology adds credibility to these surprising findings. Data for Progress surveyed 1,127 likely voters nationwide between August 15th to 18th, 2025, using carefully weighted web panels to ensure the sample accurately represents the American electorate by age, gender, education, race, geography, and previous voting patterns. With a margin of error of just 3 percentage points, these results carry substantial statistical weight. What makes this situation particularly intriguing and potentially explosive is the massive disconnect it reveals. While the Trump administration positions this rollback as fulfilling campaign promises, the data suggests they're actually moving in the opposite direction of public sentiment, even among their own supporters. This raises some uncomfortable questions that political strategists on both sides are probably grappling with right now. If nearly 8 in 10 Republican voters support regulating greenhouse gas emissions, why is a Republican administration eliminating the legal framework that makes such regulation possible? Are politicians misreading their base? Or are they prioritizing other considerations over voter preferences? But here's where it gets even more controversial. Critics argue that eliminating the endangerment finding represents more than just policy disagreement. They claim it's an attempt to ignore scientific consensus for political gain. Supporters counter that excessive environmental regulations stifle economic growth and that states, not federal agencies, should handle these issues. The timing couldn't be more politically charged. As extreme weather events continue making headlines and climate concerns influence everything from insurance rates to agricultural yields. The Trump administration is essentially betting that voters care more about economic concerns than environmental protection. Yet, but polling suggests that's a risky gamble. When given the choice, American voters across party lines seem to view greenhouse gas emissions as a legitimate public health threat worthy of government attention. This disconnect between policy and public opinion sets up what could become one of the defining political battles of the Trump presidency. Will voters punish politicians who ignore their environmental concerns? Or will economic arguments ultimately prevail? What do you think? Are politicians out of touch with voter sentiment on environmental issues, or do these poll numbers mask deeper concerns about government overreach and economic impact? Should the EPA retain broad authority to regulate emissions based on health concerns, or does this represent federal overreach that individual states should handle? The comment section is wide open. And honestly, this is exactly the kind of issue where reasonable people can completely disagree while looking at the same data.